Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a phenomenal show coming right up with special guest Kenya-aissa, and she's here to talk with us about her new book, Sacred Girl, Spiritual Life Skills for Conscious Young Women. Now, Kenya is a Berkeley native and has been working with children and families for over 30 years. She has won awards for teaching and writing, and she was the recipient of the 2014 San Francisco Fashion Award for Best Makeup Artist. After earning a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in counseling psychology, she became a social worker, a professional freelance makeup artist, and in 2016 added registered yoga teacher to her resume. So let's welcome to the show, Kenya.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Oh, well, it's such a joy to spend this time with you. I'm so glad and so excited for you. My goodness, I mean, your book was just released today, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely excited.
Well, books are always, kind of a labor of love, and a lot of times it's like a life passion. Why don't you share a little bit with us, like what's brought you to this point that you decide, gosh, I'm going to write this book?
Well, honestly, I wrote the book several years ago, and I made a lot of changes recently when I decided to go ahead and publish. And when I originally wrote it, a lot of things were different than they are today. The book is about girls. A lot of changes have happened since I wrote the book. Social media wasn't really that much of a thing back then. So a lot of things have happened, and I just wasn't in a space at that time to just promote it and to publish it and to really get deep into all that work that it takes. So now I'm in a place where I can do that, and I'm even more passionate about it now than I was then, because so many things have changed in the world of girls and young women since that time.
Well, and so when you started on your path, because I know you to be this amazing makeup artist.
Thank you.
You're in, just the perfect area where people use you for magazines and movie shoots and all these amazing things.
Yes.
So on your path, when because you've got these many hats that you wear that I think all combined to help for just what makes this book so unique. How did you get to a place where you're like, gosh, I need to focus on girls' empowerment, and that's something that's really hard?
Well, when I first was inspired to write this book, I was a counselor at a women's program here in Redwood City, and in the process of working with the girls, and these girls were all girls who had been it was basically a residential rehab for adolescents and teenagers, and my group was all girls who had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I knew that the way they were struggling, they were feeling powerless, but I also knew these issues were bigger than me and outside of my scope. Do you know what I mean? The deep psycho-spiritual issues I just didn't feel like were getting addressed at that time. And I needed a way to address their issues from a spiritual angle. And ultimately, at that time, it was still very new to me. I was a new counselor, and frankly, I was learning as I went along. So thank goodness they trusted me, because I was so new. And I remember being really baffled at that time by the differences in how kids dealt with trauma, even kids from the same family being raised by the same parents. So I was discussing this with one of my coworkers who I knew had a horrific childhood, really, and had experienced extreme abuse and trauma. And I said something along the lines of, why do some kids seem to overcome their traumas and others fall into like self-destructive behavior, depression, substance abuse, etc.? And she asked me if I'd ever read a book called The Transcendent Child. And I hadn't, but of course I bought it, or she gave it to me. I can't remember which. Mm-hmm. But it sparked my desire to learn more about how I could help my kids. And one of my biggest takeaways from the work I did with them was it's not about the situation, it's how we deal with the situation, right? And how we deal with the situation has to do with our own thoughts, how our thoughts manifest in our bodies, how we manage our stress, and how we, when certain things come our way, how we choose to take them in. So, what is out there that they can access long after I'm out of their lives was really my question, because I can't just work with someone and when they meet their treatment goals, wash my hands of them. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I wanted my kids to have some tools in their toolbox that outlasted me. So I started working with them in ways that incorporated their bodies, like yoga. I was not a yoga teacher at the time. I am now a registered yoga teacher, but at that time, I barely knew what I was doing. Like we had Rodney Yee tapes, and I was really just flying by the seat of my pants. But I was working with them on things like the nervous system, meditation, breathing, etc. And then that grew into the spirituality group, which then later grew into the book.
And kind of just more from there, because I know you also have a pretty big community of people following you for Sacred Girl, for the beauty. You write about beauty products as well, and of course you would. Because you've got all these fabulous people that you do their makeup for day in and day out. And also for the yoga, which I find just to be a beautiful combination. But it's interesting, unless someone had the background that you have, also working with children, it doesn't really, it wouldn't really afford somebody to write this type of a book that kind of includes all things that young girls are interested in. Right.
That's what I was reaching for. I really want it to be very accessible to girls and young women of all backgrounds and all spiritual backgrounds, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all cultures. And so for me, it took a lot of research and a lot of learning and really traveling my own path to even get into a position where I felt very confident that I knew what I was doing, that I knew what I was talking about, that I really was that person. I think that there often can be a time in all of our lives where we second guess ourselves, or we think, is this really what I should be doing, or shouldn't I kind of stick to the status quo, or do a little bit more what's expected of me. And I was a social worker for a very long time, 20 years or so. And I really felt like this was my path, that this spiritual teaching, working with young girls, really finding a way to help them reach into their spiritual essence and their spiritual side long before it becomes a necessity, right? So we get to be adult women and we're like, oh, now I'm going to get to know myself. Now I'm going to try to walk my path, or whatever that may be. And as someone who has worked primarily with children, youth, adolescents, young adults, I thought to myself, that's too late. Getting to be an adult, that's too late. we should start this knowledge earlier so that we can have, a healthier adolescence, a more confident adolescence, a more confident teenhood, and a more confident young adulthood, Yeah.
And I agree with you. If we're trying to figure it out when we're in our 20s and 30s, how much time are we really kind of losing trying to figure that out and figure, our standing in the world?
Exactly. And, these kids these days are savvy. They are smart. They know more about computers and gaining information and YouTube and everything than I will ever know. I have an 8-year-old, and sometimes I'm like, can you help me figure out how to find stuff online or whatever? So, the point of the matter is that as I've worked with kids all of these years, the main thing that strikes me is they are savvy. They are smart. They have access to things that I didn't have access to when I was young. They have access to information. They have access to services. They have access to all kinds of things. And it's totally reasonable to teach them earlier, or for them to get the information earlier, that they can find their own path, they can find their own spiritual path, and that they have a lot of power within them, that all of the power isn't outside of them just because they're young. You can be a powerful girl. You don't have to wait till adulthood to find your own inner strength,
Yeah, and what a relief that is. And I got to say, I love, you start off chapter 1. What's the point? What's the point of exploring spirituality? And I think a lot of times, for young girls, they're looking at it going, what does this mean to me? Why would I even bother exploring this?
Exactly. And so that's the main question that I want to answer. And like you said, I jump off right with that at the beginning of the book, because for whoever wants this book, if it's young girls themselves, or if it's a teacher or a social worker or somebody who works with kids on a regular basis, somebody is going to ask that question, why would I want to do this? Why can't I just live my life? And yes, you can, but your internal life is really, really, really important. And I think that that's not really explored that much in a lot of the day-to-day activities that young people are doing. There's a lot of activities. Most kids are involved in a lot of things. There's all the school responsibilities. There's family responsibilities. For some young people, they have jobs, or even the kids, most of the kids that I worked with for a lot of my career were kids in the foster care system. So that lends itself to many more layers of issues and concerns. And all of that stuff is really outside of ourselves. The real journey is inside of yourself. The real journey is self-discovery and figuring out what your unique, special path is. And so that is the reason why I jumped off with that first chapter, what's the point? The point is you have a right, you have a responsibility to yourself to look into yourself, to figure out what makes, I was talking about your spirit breathe, what makes your spirit breathe? What is your unique, path in this world? It's really important. And again, that's something that doesn't have to be a journey for the future. That's something that can start right now. These kids they can multitask.
Well, and they're at a very young age. Today's young people are very interested in things that, help identify what their goals are. And you talk about that in your book, is identifying your goals. Because a lot of times you may have a young person who's really into, like saving the planet or helping people who are homeless or whatever they feel that they're drawn to. But when we come down to the smaller things in life, and you talk about this in your book, it's what is my life missing? When do I feel at peace? I think those are such important questions for young people.
Totally. And how often do we ask those questions? Even as the adults, kids are spending, right, and the young people are spending their entire day in school, and there isn't a lot of that push towards self-exploration or any of that. The push is really towards academic achievement and good behavior in school. So you're not driving your teacher crazy. You have a good attitude or whatever. There isn't a lot of encouragement by the adults in their lives, or for the most part, or whoever's out there in the world, their dance teacher, piano teacher, coach, that talks really about what are you looking for your future. What are your passions? I don't remember anybody ever asking me as a child what my passion was, or what my spiritual life was all about. I was in a very lucky situation, I believe, where I went to a Catholic school, but I had this really out there 8th grade teacher who taught our class how to meditate. She taught us about meditation, which I think is kind of strange for a Catholic nun to be teaching kids in a Catholic school. And she was very, very out there, that teacher. But that really changed my life because I meditated all the time as a child. And I think that really helped me connect with myself, connect with my spirit. And it helped me to be more confident. And so I think that's what's really needed, because we do see girls struggling so much still. I mean, year after year. There was Reviving Ophelia many, many years ago, and this has always been an issue that has been talked about, but we need solutions. We need actual plans on how to get girls to be confident and to get them to understand that they have that power. They have the power within themselves to get to where they want to be and to create their own spiritual path.
Yeah, to really make it, make their own path in life and shine. And I love how you talk about, the simple questions like, what's my fantasy job, if I can do anything like that.
Right.
I love how we're at, it's encouraging these young girls to really dream big.
Exactly. And I think that that's good. It's great. They need to dream big. And I think that a lot of boys and young men, I think that they're really having those conversations early on. People are asking them early on, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a fireman? Do you want to be a doctor, et cetera? And people are asking those things of girls as well, but I've spent the past 20 years or so hearing conversations with young people since that's been my job. And I have often heard a big difference in the questions asked to young women and the questions asked to young men. And it's almost like oftentimes people are just, entertaining the girls, not taking it seriously, not taking their dreams seriously or their path as seriously as boys. And I think that there are a lot of changes happening now where young girls and young women are really starting to tire of that, and they really want to be taken a lot more seriously. They want their bodies to be taken more seriously. They want to feel safe and protected, and they also want to feel strong. And so I think it's really important to not just have these conversations, what do you want for your future, et cetera, but to have them sit down and write that type of thing out. That's one of the reasons why I ask those questions, because they're pointed questions. It's not just kind of like a vague, so what are your goals? It's more, let's talk about each individual goal and let's write it out. Let's talk it out. Let's talk about how you're going to get there. Let's plan these things out. How do you feel about your own ability? Do you feel like you have the ability to get to where you want to be? And I think that planning and that making it tangible is really important, as opposed to it just being this like vague, I want to be an astronaut, or whatever. Just like a little bit more like you can do anything that you want to do. Like you do not know the amount of power that you have. And it's important to let them know you have that power. It's not just up to the outside world. You have it within you,
Well, and when I was a little girl, one of the things I wanted to be was an astronaut in my school. So, I was following the astronauts around going, what do I need to do this, So I get it, because unless you have that exposure, you want to be able to dream big. And I love your book, it asks questions like, how do I feel about myself? Am I important? And, a lot of times that's such a good kind of barometer to see where children are at, as far as how they're feeling about themselves generally. It's like, well, you're important. Let's see what we can do to make you feel better if you're not there.
Right. And, because I've spent most of my career working with kids in the foster care system, that is really, really challenging for those kids, because you have a lot of children who don't have parents or who have been in 25 foster homes by the time they're 12 or 13. I mean, that's real. That's a huge population of young people. And so one of the things that I saw that's really heartbreaking over all these years that I worked in social services is that not every kid has the same amount of support. Many, many children out there in this world are still going to come to adulthood. They're going to make it to adulthood, and a lot of them are going to make it to adulthood having never had parents, having never had stability. And that's really, really heartbreaking, but it's also kind of a call to the people that work with those kids. I was one of those people, to understand that they're not always being told, oh, you can do this. There's thousands of kids in the Bay Area where I am that are not being told that. They're not being told you are somebody, you're important, and so you have a lot of kids who are having a social worker for a long time, but you also have kids that are having 10, 15 social workers by the time they're 14 or 15, and they're not getting adopted, or there's just no stability and there's not enough encouragement. And so we have to understand as a society that these kids are out there and they need to understand that they can have expectations of themselves. They can have goals, and then where are they going to get that from? If they're not getting that from family, because they don't have family. I know many children that don't have family. And so if they're not getting that, they're still going to be members of this society. So the question is, how do we want to get them? How do we want to get them there? Somebody has to be providing this information that you have to tap into your own power. You have to tap into your own strength. You do not have to be a victim of this world, because sometimes you have to raise yourself a little bit, which is really sad to say, but it is the reality. It's a reality that I've been looking at for a really long time, for many, many years. And so that was, a huge impetus for writing this book. It's like, come on, adults in society, let's teach these youth that they have power within themselves and that they can, make this happen, and you have to love yourself first.
And that's so important, love ourselves as we are. And I know for a lot of people it's kind of tough, especially when we talk about, and you have a whole chapter dedicated to the body, because there's such an emphasis and stress on young people to look a certain way or to be a certain way, and it's got to be just difficult, even as an adult. I mean, those things are impossible, nor should we try to do those,
Absolutely. And, that was a struggle even when I was young, and I was also a dancer when I was young. And so as my body developed and I got curvier, and, there's a lot of pressure in not just the dance world, but in the athletic world in just every day for women to look a certain way. And it is unrealistic for most women here in this country, for most young girls here in this country, but now they have the added issue of social media, Instagram, the Instagram models and the Kardashians and all of these things, and that we have a very high plastic surgery culture. We have young women who are getting Botox before they get any frown lines, so that they never get any frown lines. It's all just, it's not healthy, and it's important for young women to understand that a lot of the things that they're seeing in the media and a lot of the things that they're seeing on social media are not real. It's not realistic. As a makeup artist, I've seen models and even regular people get photoshopped to death. Somebody took my picture one time for a magazine, and by the time the photoshopping was done, I was unrecognizable. Like, I showed my husband a picture, and he was like, "Who's that?" And a lot of these young girls are looking at the media and looking at social media, and they're thinking that's realistic. They're thinking that girl is running around with, a big butt and no cellulite or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And not realizing it's been photoshopped,
Right. And then that makes them feel bad about themselves, or, they feel like bad about their bodies, when really, if they're healthy, if you're a healthy girl, I don't care what size you are, it's all about loving yourself where you're at. And if you have certain fitness goals or whatever, or dietary goals, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But, you have to love yourself no matter where you're at, because this is your body. This is what you were given. This is the vessel that you live in, and you have to love it. If you do not love it and take care of it, nobody else will. That is your responsibility, to love it and take care of it to the best of your ability. And hating on yourself or wishing you looked like somebody else is completely useless and a waste of time.
Amen to that. Amen. Well, and, Kenya, I have to say, there's so much in your book that even though I know this is written for girls, it really relates to a lot of women as well, regardless of where they are in their journey, because some people, like as you were saying before, they may have never picked up these lessons or information. So what a great resource it is.
Thank you so much. It's funny you should say that, because somebody did. I've had a lot of people read my book, but one woman read my book, an adult woman, and she said that it really resonated with her. And I was so moved by that, Marianne, that I started crying my eyes out. I was like, I was hoping that would happen. I was hoping that it would resonate with a lot of women, and since that's what is happening, that just makes me ecstatic. I can't even express to you how happy that makes me, because you're right. I mean, we grown women still struggle with so many of these issues, and it's not helpful it's not helpful to us. It's like if we don't love ourselves first for things way beyond what we look like or whatever, we have to do that, because there's so much more to us than that. There's so much more to girls. There's so much more to women than what we look like or that we're well behaved, that we're not, making too many waves or whatever. And so that's where kind of finding your own power comes in, and finding your own path, and not being fearful of looking at yourself in a different way, and looking at yourself and discovering who you truly are. That is something that I want all women to do. Young girls, older women, I don't care if you're 95 years old. If you are still alive, it is not too late to change your path. It is not too late to take control of your path and to take control of how you feel about yourself and where you're going in life.
Kenya, it's very easy to see how you've inspired thousands of young women and girls to blaze their own trail and be true to themselves. On that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Kenya-aissa in regards to her new book, Sacred Girl. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Kenya-aissa as she's sharing her new book with us, Sacred Girl, Spiritual Life Skills for Conscious Young Women. Before we went to break, we were talking about how your book is relative for any age. There are a lot of women, and especially young girls out there, that have never learned these life skills.
Absolutely. And I think that you just touched on something that I think is really important, which is gratitude. You know, when I was working with my first group of girls that inspired this book, all over the walls of the home that they lived in, there were signs that said, put some gratitude in your attitude. And we used to joke about that a lot. You know, you're not putting gratitude in your attitude today. But the older I've gotten and now I have my own child, I have found that to be an extremely important thing. You know, if we're waking up every day, if we're in a healthy body, we have a healthy mind, we're getting to eat something. You know, we woke up this morning. That's really good in and of itself. Some people don't. And so I think that if you're facing the day, if you're starting your day with an attitude of gratitude, no matter what your circumstances are, then you've gotten half the battle won, because that can change the entire trajectory of your day. If you wake up in the morning and you're thinking positive thoughts, you wake up in the morning thinking, this is what I'm grateful for today. And that's something that I'm talking to my son about, who's 8 years old. What are you grateful for today? Because if he's having a bad day, or if he comes home cranky, or if I pick him up cranky, you know, I always remind him, you are kind of a fortunate child. You have two parents who adore you. You have extended family, godparents, cousins, people who love and adore you. You have a nice home. You have, you know, our home isn't palatial, you know, but we have a small home that's full of love, and the refrigerator is full of food. We have a dog out back. You know, you are a very loved, fortunate child. And so, not to say, oh, whatever you're feeling today isn't important, or if you had a hard time at school or whatever, not to say that stuff isn't important, but let's look at the glass half full. You know, like, how serious is that issue really? Is that issue going to still be here tomorrow? Because what is going to still be here tomorrow is that you're going to wake up and you're going to get breakfast. You're gonna have the same people loving you tomorrow, the same friends, you know. So thinking about that first thing in the morning. I think I even saw a video about that recently. Somebody even said, you know, if you start your day with this attitude, that's going to change the rest of your day. That's not always easy to do. It's easier said than done. But I feel like it's something that needs to be put into our practice. You know, our daily practice.
Yeah, have that as part of what we do every single day. And it makes such a big difference. And to teach people, especially young girls, this at an early age really sets them off on a path where they're expecting to have these moments to be grateful for, and it just kind of compounds.
That's the hope. that is definitely the hope. I am, in my own little way, in my own little community, in my own little way of putting my passion out there, that is a movement that I am trying to start and trying to be a part of and trying to get other people a part of, which is, I feel very, very strongly about women and girls. I feel like we are at a precipice. We're at an extremely important time in history, especially here in our country, when we've got so many challenges. We've got so many political challenges. We've got so many societal challenges. The children are scared in school because of the whole gun control thing. You know, they have to start feeling that they are in control of their own safety and that they have a say, that their voices matter. And when I see that happening, even if it's started by something that's a negative event, when I see them taking a stand and speaking out loud and understanding that their voices are making an impact, that is everything. That is exactly what I want to do here. That's exactly what I want to promote here. You know, as the Me Too movement has, you know, gained momentum, I'm sure you've probably seen this too. I've seen super young girls speaking out, you know, speaking publicly, speaking in front of hundreds and thousands of people about their own safety, their own bodies, sexual assault, sexual harassment. That is not something that when I was a kid we talked about. And, if it was even a thing for people when I was a kid, which of course it was of course happening, but we didn't really talk about that stuff. It was kind of expected that this was going to be, your part of your lot in life. And what I am seeing and what is extremely encouraging is that these young girls are not trying to stand for that. They are not having it, and that is so amazing. It is so encouraging, and I just love it. I have so much hope. I have so much confidence in the girls of today, the girls that are growing into young women. I have so much confidence in them.
Well, and that's with giving these young women that kind of information, hopefully is preventing future assaults from happening, or at least making it where if something does happen, they know that it's okay to go and talk to a teacher, a leader in their community, somebody, their parents, in regards to what's happening so that, it will end. And it's,
right.
It just further empowers young girls because you're right. Like back in the day, when I was growing up, if those things happened, and from what I've heard from a lot of people that have gone through that type of horrific events, even if something was to be reported, nothing really kind of took place.
Right.
It's kind of a different time in history.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that history wasn't too long ago. It's still happening. I think people who are violating women and young women and girls are definitely put on notice at this time. But I remember even when I was very young, when I was in my very early 20s, probably 21, 22, I was a waitress in a restaurant. I spent most of my life as a waitress in some way. I think I've worked in almost every restaurant in the Bay Area. But I was a waitress at a restaurant, and I was constantly being harassed by another waiter who was about 20 years older than me, at least 20 years older than me. And it was, I didn't really know what to do. Some of my fellow waiters would sometimes literally physically get between me and this person. And finally, one day I came into the restaurant just to pick up my paycheck, and I was wearing overalls, and this man had the audacity to stick his hand into the bib of my overalls and put his hands on my body. And I elbowed him with my bony little 21-year-old elbow. I elbowed him in the ribs, or what I thought was his ribs, because he was a really big man. So again, there was that physical imposition, and I screamed, keep your hands off of me. And so fortunately, the upside is that man never touched me again, and at that time, I thought that was enough because I was young. I just wanted him to stop bothering me. But this happened right in front of our manager, and he continued to work there. There was no repercussion on his part, and that type of thing is, I think, not happening that much anymore. It's got to still be happening, but I think that there is a red flag out there amongst people who are putting their hands on other people, be it men, women, children, whatever, who are putting their hands on other people where, you know what, there could be some pretty strong repercussions if you choose to engage in that behavior. You might want to keep your hands to yourself,
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and, and so this kind of leads me to my next question, because, your book touches on so much. You also talk about love and compassion as spiritual catalysts. So what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, I'm hoping everybody grabs the book so that they can look at this for themselves. But what I really mean by that is we have a lot of challenges in our society, and we're I think we feel like we live in kind of a dog-eat-dog world. If you want to get the things that you want, if you want to get the education that you want, the job that you want, etc., you have to be kind of a bulldog in a lot of ways. And that's great. It's great to have goals. It's great to strive. And I think that's magnificent, and everybody should do that. But I also think that keeping love in the forefront of everything that you do is enriching. It's enriching to yourself. And keeping compassion in the forefront of everything that you do, understanding that there are a lot of people in this world who need love and compassion, who need, support. And if you are keeping in your mind, like, what can I do to help? Paying it forward, what can I do to help in my life? I think that is part of living a spiritual life. That's part of following a spiritual path, thinking outside of yourself, thinking about other people. I think that many religious and spiritual traditions promote that. That's something that's very important in all traditions of spiritual thought and even religious thought. And I think that is the way that we can move forward, not just as individuals, but as a society. If we're seeing a lot right now. We're seeing what's happening with the children at the Mexican border. We're seeing so many things in our society right now. Many of those things have always happened, and many of them are just really in the forefront because our media covers every single solitary thing 24/7. And if we take a look at things and we think to ourselves, what can I do? That is often more for us. That helps us as well as helping other people. And so I think that if you are keeping within your mind, what can I do? What can I do with love? How can I love my environment? What can I do for my world? What can I do for my neighbor? That is a spiritual catalyst, because that's a way for you to enhance your spiritual path and enhance your spiritual growth, and to really just understand what kind of person you want to be. It all circles back around to who do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? And what's the impact you want to leave on this world?
Yeah, what would that look like? And it's interesting because you do address things like, blessing mean people, which, it kind of sets the energy in a different place, because a lot of times, especially if kids are riding in their car with their parents, and, you've got people who are aggressive drivers, and the parents are yelling at the aggressive drivers. You could just see this kind of spirals out of control, this energy. And to show them that there's another way, I think helps young people, especially young girls, go, gosh, that might be what my parents are doing, but that's not what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. And that is taking control of how you're going to act and how you're going to behave. And does that, it's so funny that you should say that about, even kind of aggressive driving and road rage and all of that type of thing. I have an 8-year-old. when my husband drives sometimes and people get on his nerves, he's yelling out the window, all of this stuff. and I'm always sitting there like thinking to myself, they can't hear you.
Well, and we laugh about it, but it's more common than people think. I mean, people do get really agitated, and one of the ways you see it most of the time is on the road.
Absolutely. And I have plenty of friends that are like that. I have another friend that gets super agitated when she drives, and, that's all understandable. But it's just like any other thing in life, whether it's driving, whether it's a mean boss, whether it's a mean girl, if it's a teacher that you feel isn't fair to you, isn't behaving fair to you, that how you respond to that is completely up to you. You can be angry, but you have to then understand that anger manifests itself in your body, not their body. That anger turns into stress. It can turn into all kinds of things that negatively affect your body. Many years ago, when I was really stressed out, I would have this whole thing where if I got really stressed out, and of course, as a social worker for a million years, stress was a huge part of my life. And, there's a lot of pressure. And then sometimes you have clients yelling at you, screaming at you, cussing at you. And that's very challenging. And what would happen for me is that my hair would start to fall out. Like literally my hair would start to fall out. And you've seen me, I have a lot of hair, right? And
you've got gorgeous hair, so it's hard for me to imagine that.
Yeah, but I would notice, I'd look up one day, and I would have like a small little bald spot on top of my head. And I'm like, what? And that was all from stress. And so I was talking to my hairstylist back then, and she said, listen, you're going to have to do something different. And she said, you can be bald if you want to. But she was like, you might want to make another choice as far as how you're handling your stress and how you're handling other people's attitudes. If you're going to work every day or going to school every day or raising a family or trying to do well in class or whatever, you have to find some me time, find some time to take care of yourself in a more appropriate way. Because if I had kept going along that path, I could have been as bald as an egg, But instead, what I did based on that conversation with my very wise hairdresser was I really implemented a plan on how to deal with my stress. And so I literally started journaling, and that's something I talk about in the book, because from personal experience, journaling is kind of a lifesaver, which it seems so simple. Like, really, I can just write out my feelings or write out what happened with my day. It is so simple and so effective. And I started journaling. I started making myself take bubble baths every night with like lavender oils and essential oils. These are literally things that I just made myself do every single day. And as my little tiny hair started to grow back, I realized I'm like, wow, these are tools that actually work, And so, yeah, I mean, we can't always control what's happening around us, but we can certainly control how we respond to what's happening around us. That's up to us.
It's such great advice, and my goodness, I think about, and you probably think about this too. I don't know. I mean, you're pretty much a sage in this area, but when I think about what I would have said to my 5 or 6 or 7-year-old self, your book it really encompasses it all.
Wow, thank you. That's extremely flattering. And I did think about some of my own struggles as a young kid, or some of my, and I grew up a pretty lucky kid. I had parents that loved me. My parents were divorced or whatever, but they were both still extremely close to me and co-parented well, which was very lucky on my part. But, all kids have struggles. All kids have perceptions, whether they're right or wrong, about how the world is treating them or what their place is in the world. A lot of kids struggle with that, like, what is my place in this world? And so I really want this book and my future books, because I've already got some in the back of my head that I'm taking notes for and researching and working on, that I want them to be in a place where they feel like, wow, there is something I can do for myself. And I'm hoping that other people who read the book understand how to support young people in that journey, not the whole old, children are to be seen and not heard, or, whatever, but, being in a position to listen to kids and listen to young people about what they're feeling, what their thoughts are, and that'll help kids not be so afraid to share what they're feeling, Yeah,
and be able to really, instead of having life happen to them, they can be effective in their own life.
That is really the whole goal in a nutshell. That's it right there, what you just said. That life doesn't – I'm not the only sage around here, Marianne.
Well, I did read your book, okay?
Thank you. So, yeah, there's so much that is up to you, and I think ultimately it's you understanding that you are not powerless, that it does not matter how old you are, how young you are, that you're not powerless, that you do have a voice, and you have an external voice that you can share with the world. You have an internal voice that you must share with yourself, that you must respect yourself, respect your voice, respect your instincts and your intuition. And that's really, really important.
Yeah. Well, and so what final things would you like our listeners and young listeners to take away from your book?
That's a really good question. I think that for girls today, I feel like if they can thrive right now, right, wherever she is in her life now, she can live out her purpose in the future. So whatever her dreams are, she can make them come true. She can inspire other women and girls to do the same thing. And women have to encourage each other. And like I keep saying, we can do this when we're very young. The entertainment industry is quick to portray girls as mean girls, full of jealousy and deceit, and then to add insult to injury, adult women are often portrayed exactly the same way. And to see, for me personally, sometimes when I watch TV, to see grown women ripping out each other's hair weaves and talking trash about each other and being so superficial and materialistic, it's just feeding this spiritual deficit that is so prevalent in our society. And it's insulting to girls and women. It's depressing. And you think to yourself, this is supposed to be entertaining? Like, why? And, this whole female cattiness is a part of our culture, and it's considered entertainment. But I do, like I was saying earlier, I think there's a very strong push against this, and young women are coming together and providing each other with love and acceptance and support. And I really think that goes for today's young people in general. There's a sisterhood, like with the Me Too movement and all the other things that are going on. And I genuinely believe that sisterhood will continue. And I think that girls are realizing that there's strength in numbers, and young people want to stand together for the greater good. So ultimately, that's like what my hope is for the book. There's a woman named Nina Shaw, and I heard this quote of hers recently, which is, if you want to be an empowered woman, empower other women. And really what that says to me, and what my takeaway for that is when women support each other, great things happen, and not just locally but globally, internationally. And that is that's my dream. That's my dream life. That's my dream for girls and women. To me, that's all of it.
Well, and what's interesting, so let's say a young girl at her school doesn't really have a group that she feels is serving this purpose for her. It's really easy. I mean, I did it when I was a kid. It's really easy to start your own book club and have other girls be a part of it, get your Sacred Girl book, and have that be part of what you are all getting together and develop your own community. Get together with other young girls in a book club setting where you can go ahead and talk about Sacred Girl and go through why these things are important and lift each other up.
100%. And that is, again, taking matters into your own hands. As young girls today, they are meeting for many things. They're meeting just to go to the mall. Me and my friends did it. I'm sure you and your friends did it. We're meeting for many things. But again, I think that girls today are looking deeper. Things are starting to be really, really, and have been for a while, but are really starting to be more important to them. They're looking at more important things, social issues, social justice, things that, I'm going to be honest, I was not thinking about these things when I was really young. Maybe in my teens, yes, and in college, yes. But when I was very young, I think, because I probably, like a lot of young girls, lacked confidence or whatever my issues were at that time, I wasn't really thinking about things like how can me and my friends lift each other up? What can we do to work together for a greater good within our group and outside of our group? And I think that, I would love that would be like my dream come true, right? For there to be Sacred Girl book clubs all over the place. That would be the best. That would literally be the best thing that ever happened in my life.
Well, and so let's say we have some young listeners that would like to connect with you. Is there a way they can email you and ask you questions?
Absolutely. They can absolutely email me at Ruby Envy. So I'm going to spell that out for you. R-U-B-Y, B as in boy. So R-U-B as in boy, Y, E-N like Nancy, V like Victor, Y, at gmail.com. RubyEnvy@gmail.com. I would love that.
Well, perfect. And we're going to have the website here so people can visit your website, learn more about your book, and be part of your community. Kenya, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. I had a great time, and it was so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Well, Kenya, it has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you. My goodness, you're such an inspiration. I absolutely loved your book. And for anybody who's looking for that perfect gift for a young person or a young woman, this is the book for them. Again, you can reach Kenya at her website, rubyenvywellness.com, and you want to look for the tab that says Sacred Girl and click on that. You can learn all about the book and also all the upcoming events. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to tune in today. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.